Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Comics Morte, episode 84, I believe. Man, it's going up there. But yeah, we got a brand new guest, George Michail. And how you doing, sir? Thank you for coming on.
Hey, I'm
And
doing
yeah,
great.
but this is a great one. Just from what I've read from his book and everything, and the covers that I've seen, it's definitely like a horror comic and a horror action comic. And I'm really can't wait to read that. So, anyone who's watching or live or going to after the show, just tell everybody exactly how you started and what you want, why you wanted to go into comics in the first place.
Sure. So my name is George Michail. I'm a comic book writer. I've loved comics ever since I was a little kid. I had a copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by Stan Lee and John Buscema, and I wore that book out at the kitchen table. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so Batman the Animated Series,
Oh
X-Men,
yeah.
Ninja Turtles, all those things were like
Hmm.
huge in my life at that time. And I always loved comics. I wanted to be a part of it. And as I got older, I felt my art skills kind of eroded as I got distracted with high
Gotcha.
school, and I always wanted to be a creative person, but I was really nervous about putting myself out there. And it took like a big car accident to kind of just give me a good shock and like think,
Hmm.
life is short. I should try this. This is something I've always wanted to do, and so I started getting after it about 4 years ago, writing books. And so the comic that I'm here today to talk about is called Cover of Darkness. It's kind of like Game of Thrones meets Universal Monsters. It's about a family in medieval Romania that gets separated from each other and encounters vampires, werewolves, the mummy, creature from the Black Lagoon, and a steampunk Atlantean Frankenstein. So kind of new takes on all the classic monsters. And it's about our
Yeah,
family's journey back to each other.
that's awesome. Yes, like I'm gonna have to open this up to show people because I really love the cover designs. But like you said, the steampunk, and I don't know who did the artwork for the Gill monster, but I love the design. Very beautiful work.
Thanks. Yeah, our series artist is MJ Hiblin. He's an
Hmm.
incredible talent from the UK. He does everything with his finger. He doesn't use a pencil or a stylus. Um,
Really
yeah, so he's just kind of a mad genius. And then we have these variant covers. They're actually right behind me here.
hmm
Um, these variant covers are done by Scott McDaniel, who worked on Batman and Nightwing and Daredevil, and he's a legend. So we were super
nice.
excited to get him in on the project. Yeah, that's a Scott McDaniel cover.
Yeah, that's pretty wicked. So, you said you wanted to do this and everything. What's up, Gary? Like, was there a point where you wanted to like focus more on the writing and less the artwork because you said uh you stopped in progressing your skills? Do you feel that at one point you want to go back to it, or you believe that writing is what you're called to do in this industry?
Yeah, I think writing is kind of my wheelhouse.
Hmm.
Art, it's pretty amateur at best. I've done some coloring. I'll occasionally I'll like take a crack at if someone sends me some line art instead of
Hmm.
always. I generally I'll hire a colorist, but once in a while I'll be like, you know what, I want to try and make that happen, and so
Yeah,
I'll put some colors down sometimes.
that's awesome. And I've seen you won an award. Like, was that with any comics that you've done in the past?
Yeah, we won best comic book
Hmm.
for a series called Resilient that I do. It's published by Absolute Comics Group. They do White Widow and I Make Boys Cry, and yeah, it was from Sequential Magazine. They gave us that award, so that
That's
was
cool.
very nice.
That's awesome. So with the whole steampunk and the monsters, like what was this a story that you had like on your mind for the longest of time, or was this something that you were like, okay, now I want to get into this type of genre of comics?
No, I've had this kind of story in my mind for a long time. Different
Hmm.
parts of it. So I write it with my co-writer Chris Cam,
Gotcha.
and so Chris is my cousin, and we grew up together, and uh, and so I had some aspects of the story in my mind ever since I was a little boy. And
Gotcha.
and then when I started jamming with her, she had some ideas for some different parts of the story as well, and we kind of
Mhm.
started putting them together, and everything fit really nice.
That's
Um,
awesome.
a lot of this, like my love of monsters, though, started off when I was a kid. I watched. Do you remember Monster Squad?
Of course, I love Monster Squad.
Yeah.
Wolfman's got nards,
Yes. And
you know, and
Fishman
I
stole my
and you were
Twinkie.
yeah, exactly, and you're talking about, like, 80s, 90s. I'm wearing Ninja Turtle, you're wearing a Freddy Krueger shirt, as I see. So, yeah,
Yes.
awesome
Um,
stuff.
so I watched Monster Squad when I was 5. My parents, we lived in an apartment building at the time, and they went
Mhm.
over to a friend's house one evening, and they left me at home with this movie that they had rented from like Blockbuster, and I threw that in and watched it, and then even though they were just down the hall, I just felt like I was stuck alone and with these monsters just banging around in my mind, and it scared the crap out of me. And ever since
Yeah.
then, I've wanted to have like this shared universe of horror characters where they can all
Mhm.
interact with each other, and nobody else is really doing that. So
Oh,
I
yeah,
thought,
for sure, and pretty much, I know before the whole shared universe with, all these superheroes and stuff in the cinematic universe, like you said, with Universal Monsters is probably the one who started all because you had all these other movies like Frankenstein's meets Wolfman and stuff like that. And I'm really happy to see more and more indie creators go back to the original monsters and try to bring them back to life because anybody who doesn't know out there that a lot of them are public domain and you could write your own story you know
Mhm.
and from what I've seen with not just the artwork and your take on it, it's going to be original, and I'm just happy to see that even though it's the same monster, everyone's got a story to tell. And I don't know if you wanted to with your vampire. I don't know if it's Dracula, but I like how you went back to the Nosferatu look with the two front teeth. I was
Yeah,
like, oh yeah, that's awesome,
yeah, that's very much intentional. No,
right?
no sparkly vampires here. We've got
Yeah,
got some
I'm not a fan
grittiness
of that. You know, I do love my Lost Boys though. So,
there.
but yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
we've done our own
Okay.
take with a few of them too. Like we are werewolves in it. They're Vikings, and
Oh,
so it's fun to play with these classic characters that everyone loves, and you have to respect some of the lore, but other things like why not just kind of do your own thing with it and tell your own story and put your own stamp on it.
most definitely, especially when you were like, "Oh, werewolves fight gorillas." I'm like, that's a fight I never thought, but it would probably be amazing to see.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Like
Mhm.
with the because within the family, so the family gets separated from each other, and then it's about their
Yeah.
journey back to each other. And
Mhm.
within that family, there's twin shapeshifters, so you get lots of animal monster fights in it. I got a polar bear taking on a yeti in this thing. It's nuts.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So right now we've got we're preparing to do a Kickstarter. The Kickstarter launches October 18th, and this is for a hardcover. So the
Awesome.
comic was released by SourcePoint Press,
Mhm.
started coming out in January, and issue 6 just came out in June. The graphic novel, the hardcover collection, will be available exclusively through this Kickstarter, and there's also a card game that I've created as well, where you can
Oh, that's
build
sweet.
your build your own kind of monster army and battle against each other. It's 2 to 4 players. Uh, each game takes about 10 to 15 minutes, and I took there's this old card game called Golf where you have to like try and like get your score down to 0, and you can all
Yeah.
and you can't remember what your cards are. You have to like you only get to look at them once, and then you have to like put them down, and you have to try and remember. And I found that just to be one of the funnest card games, especially like if you're having a bit of a party and having a few drinks. It's like, oh crap, I can't remember what those cards were. Well, this game that I built reverse engineered that really old game Golf.
Mhm.
And so instead of trying to get down to the smallest number, you got to get the biggest number, and you get that by getting pairs or 3 or 4 of a kind of these monsters. And every card features like just incredible artwork by MJ Hiblin from our comic book series.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you were talking about like the steampunk Frankenstein, just the design alone is pretty wicked. Let me see if I could bring it up.
Yeah, we gave him.
But yeah, very awesome.
Yeah, so he's got a
Yeah, let me go back.
superconductor to the cranium.
Mhm.
On the right there, he's got a big metal jaw, and
Yeah.
then we gave him like a cookie jar lid on top to to put the brain bag in.
Mhm. Now, with these characters, like, of course, usually we wait to ask questions about your favorite horror movies and stuff like that. But you're designing comics based off of the original monsters, so why not start with it since you're writing a story with all these characters? Like, what was your most favorite universal monster of all time, and the the one you enjoyed working on the most, like writing wise, to create them from something new, like with the Frankenstein.
Yeah, I do like Dracula and vampires
Mhm.
quite a lot, and we had a lot of fun. Our vampire is in our version he's an elf, and he's and his niece is dying, and there's no medicine in like the grand elf libraries, that there's no cure for them to find, so he has to look for a new way to help the queen elf, and he goes on a journey to meet Dracula, and that's coming out. Actually, that's like a spin-off story that's coming out November 23rd into your local comic book stores. It's called Cover of Darkness Origins. So it's a big world that we're building here.
Awesome.
Um, but that one was a lot of fun, and we got to go with the Nosferatu look. And
Mhm.
the reason why he looks like that too is because he's been starving himself, right? And so
Yeah.
uh, he's a bit of a gentlemanly vampire in a sense, and that he only feeds when it's like an absolute like last resort, and so he starves himself until he can't take it anymore, and then so that's why he's got these kind of elongated fingers and hands, is because he's just slowly getting deformed from the vampirism. It's He's been fun. I also really like Creature too. Like, he's kind of a tragic figure. Like, we play him more for like he's a romantic at heart and things like this. He's nonverbal in our version as well, but he's got a bit of a soft spot, and so I really like playing around with these monsters and having them be more misunderstood than just like pure evil.
Yeah. Well, also too, I mean, that's cool that you're gonna do that with the Loch Ness, because it's one of those things when you ask people who their favorite like universal monster is, a lot of them it's gonna be either, the Wolfman, Frankenstein, or Dracula. That's like the top three. The Gill Man doesn't get enough love, even though it's the design of the costume back then was even really great for its time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we give the Mummy quite a bit of love as well.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so we're
Seen that.
those are our big five to kick
Awesome.
off the series. And one thing that's really cool about our series is that every issue is dedicated half towards our family. They're on a collision
Mhm.
course with the monsters, and the other half of every issue is dedicated solely to the monsters. So you get a standalone monster origin story in every issue. That's a good read on its own, but they're all connected to each other.
That's cool.
So in the hardcover, you'll get 5 standalone monster origin stories, plus their family's journey, and then in issue 6 is like the big conclusion where it all comes together. And so you get all 6 issues in the hardcover.
That's cool. So exactly, like, do you feel that you could pretty much write this for a long time, or do you actually have like a breaking point? Was like, okay, I'm done telling this story, and this is going to be these many issues out, all completely.
So we've been working on this for 4 years now.
Oh
Chris and
wow.
I and our artist MJ Hiblin, and we have the first 6 issues came out in stores just this year, and then now we're doing the collected edition, and then starting in November we have these one shots, so single issues,
Yeah.
and there'll be 10 origin stories that give an origin to some of the background characters that you'll see. Like, we have an
Gotcha.
Invisible Woman, we've
Oh,
got
okay.
a
Cool.
Phantom of the Opera, so
Oh,
those will be
thank
coming up.
God. No one
Yes.
gives the fan of the opera. It's like, depending on if you're a horror fan, when you say Phantom of the Opera, all they think of is the musical.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're doing something fun with her too. It's a girl in our version. It's
Oh,
so
hey, that's awesome.
yeah. So we have those coming out, and then we have another series, Cover of Darkness. It's called Hell Tournament,
Mhm.
and then we have the finale will be called Cover of Darkness Cthulhu Cometh. So we've got this planned for it'll be coming out over the next 2 years into comic book stores, but this is like the first collection. This is the very beginning of it all in this Kickstarter that we're promoting right now.
Very awesome.
Are you able to include a link to the Kickstarter in the description? Because we're just in
well,
pre-launch
I gotta
stage.
in the description for anybody to read, I got the link to your link tree, the Kickstarter, and all that stuff. So,
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I set that all up, so you're good to go. Let me see. But yeah, so with you said you met your artist where exactly, and how long have you known him?
So our artist, his name is MJ Hiblin, and he lives in the UK. And actually, I had never talked to him on the telephone up until about a few months ago. So we had been working on this thing for like 3 years with only through email. I found him on Instagram. He's got about 250,000 followers on Instagram, and he just draws a mean monster. So it's just, I reached out to him and it's like, do you want to work on a comic book with me? And I'm like, and he's like, well, send me the script and I'll take a look at it. And he wrote back and he's like, this is my dream job. He's like, I love like the classic Universal monsters, and like to be a part of this would just be amazing. So he's been rolling on this for 3 years with us now too.
That's cool. Does he have a link, Instagram or anything like that? I want to make sure I add him to the description after the show.
Yeah, it's at MJ Hiblin Art.
Sweet. So, with the show, it's a horror related show. So, we like to being on people that, a lot of the time are horror comic creators. And, I'm really happy to see more and more people out there do that. What would you say would be like one of your favorite horror comic artists that gave you really or creators that gave you inspiration, that wanted to like, okay, this person's awesome. I really want to make something that inspired me off of this guy. I don't know if you had like a favorite horror comic artist or creator out there.
Well, we've got there's some people that draw like some incredible monsters that we're working with coming up here. Andy Belanger is an artist that's worked on Swamp Thing, and he
Bernie
did
Rice and Swamp Thing. Yep.
He did this piece for, what was it called now? It was It was this person in comics. His name is Martin Slam Duncan, and he created this anthology project based off of Bram Stoker's Dracula, where every artist would just depict a scene, and Andy contributed to that. And I saw his piece, and it was very heavily influenced by Francis Ford Coppola's version of Dracula, with like the Gary Oldman Dracula. And I saw this thing and I was like, wow, man, this is amazing. It was like, I'd love to have you be part of the anthology project. And he came on and he's doing the vampire origin story for us. That was really killer. And then we're working with Nat Jones coming up, who's worked on Spawn and Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer. And he does some really cool. And another guy I really like is, oh shit, I just lost his name. He did 30 Days of Night, the comic book. Shoot, I just blanked on it. I had it a second ago. Sorry, but the artist who did 30 Days of Night, which was adapted into the movie, I've met him, and he's a really talented guy, a super nice guy, Australian guy.
Awesome. Yeah, even though I got it in the links, let me try to bring it up so people could get a screenshot of it for the Kickstarter. So, with horror movies, what would be your favorite horror movie of all time and why?
My favorite is, I got to go with Scream. I know I'm talking all about the monsters, but I also love a good slasher. and
Gotcha.
that came out like mid '90s. I was in high school, and we hadn't had a
Mhm.
lot of slashers. At that time, that was kind of starting to fade away a bit, like from its heyday in the '80s. And Scream just came in and just rejuvenated everything, and it was very meta and just cool. And Kevin Williamson's script for that was just the characters just seemed like they were right out of high school. Yeah, that's that's the Kickstarter that we're
Yeah.
talking about. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I
Yeah,
think
so like
Scream
I
is
said,
probably my
guys, there's
favorite.
a awesome. Now, it probably is the shirt or you're wearing or maybe, but besides Scream, who would you say your favorite slasher of all time would be and why?
Yeah, yeah, probably Freddy. Freddy's pretty big up
Freddy?
there for
Yeah.
me. Yeah,
Yeah.
the first one, but also I think maybe I like even Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm
Yeah,
Street 3 even more.
Dream Warriors is like a fan favorite. That was the first one I've ever seen. And for the fact is that it started introducing, their dream powers and stuff. That was a cool concept and everything. So yeah, that's a fan favorite for a lot of people.
And I also really like New Nightmare too, with
Yeah. Mhm.
and that was very kind of meta before meta was popular, because that came before Scream. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's just cool, like seeing Heather Langenkamp in that one, being
Mhm.
hunted by this kind of demon monster that's like Freddy, but he's not quite Freddy. Yeah, I don't know. It was really cool. I love that one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So, besides doing your comics and everything, I see that you have a YouTube channel where you get with like other people and you like do reviews on movies and shows like that. Did you guys just wanted to start doing that, or was that like, hey, you've been talking about it for a long time? Because I really like how creators, they'll get into other topics because you people who love horror, write horror comics and stuff like that, they love horror movies and they just love that type of genre
Yeah.
altogether.
I'm kind of the ringleader of that one. Like, I edit the videos and I try and coordinate everything for it. It's
Yeah.
me and three other writers or artists
Mhm.
that make comic books primarily, but we do other things. Um, and we get together every week and we jam on, like, usually movies from like the 80s and 90s. This month we're doing like all horror movies. So we've got Friday the 13th, Child's Play, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Halloween.
Nice.
So we're just
Awesome.
kind of doing the classics. I really like all those people that are on my channel. I met most of them through conventions, so I
Awesome.
travel quite a bit, selling my books, like different conventions all over Canada and the U.S. And yeah, so I just kept on running into these same people time and time again, and we'd get together and we'd talk comics and we'd talk movies. And when you're out on the road like that, you just kind of have to make friends,
Yeah.
or just
Yeah.
go back to the
Exactly.
hotel by yourself every night.
Yeah.
It's one of the two. And so we got to know these people and I really like them a lot. So it's been fun making this channel with them. So that one's called Inside Movies. And then I have another YouTube channel as well. It's called Inside Comics. And
Mhm.
it's an interview show where I talk with comic book creators of all different kind of experience and skill levels. And we just talk about how to make comics. And
Awesome.
that's been fun too. I've really tried to put in like all the stuff I wish I knew when I was getting started. I try and put
Hmm.
that into that channel.
Ain't ain't that the truth?
Yes.
Yeah. So you did the 80. You were watching horror movies through the 80s and 90s as well. Was Did you ever get into like horror video games or anything like that that really piqued your interest?
Not really. I played a bit of Dead Rising, the
Dead
zombie
Rising.
one in the mall.
Yeah.
That was fun. I played that one and the sequels to it. I kind of liked how it's kind of a little bit cliche, but like the zombies weren't really that big of a problem. It was like the maniac in the different corners of the mall.
Yeah,
That
like
was
the clown with the 2 chainsaws.
yes.
Yeah.
So those guys
Mhm.
are always like the real problem.
Awesome.
Yeah, I wish they would make like a like really a big budget kind of proper movie based off of the Dead Rising games. I think that could be a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, it's just cool that to see that, you have so many games out there now that are coming out that are multiplayer, like Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That's
Yes.
coming out, love that movie. But uh so with your comic and everything, with the whole family, is this family, like, no spoilers, but is the family you're gonna find out more of why this family came across the monsters in the first place, or it's just random people? Because, usually the family is important.
Yes, no, they were targeted for a very important reason,
Mhm.
and you don't find that out until like issue 3. So like
Gotcha.
it kind of comes along, and we are juggling like multiple storylines.
Yeah.
So that was one that was one criticism of the first issue, that when it came out, it was like, well, what do these two storylines have to do with each other? Well, you find out in the next issue. Like just be a little bit patient, and that's what's nice about having the hardcovers. You get the whole
Yeah.
story together,
Mhm.
so you can just kind of binge it, right, instead of waiting month to month on these
Yeah,
things.
for sure. And I like how that, you're it's kinda like going back to the '80s. People could have just you could have just simply just took all these like characters with the steampunk Frankenstein and just focus on their origins, but you wanted to start off with this family. And that has, I haven't like read the story, but just the idea of it just brings me back to Monster Squad, where you have like a family coming across monsters for no reason until you find out later on why they're so special. So yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, well, and hopefully if we do our job right, like I know everyone who picks up Cover of Darkness
Yeah.
is picking it up for the monsters.
Oh
But
yeah,
if
for
we do
sure.
our jobs right and we create these, and we spend a lot of time, that's why we went with like half of each issue is dedicated to the monsters, because I hate, as a horror fan, when you watch a horror movie, you read a horror book, and it follows the final girl for like the whole time. And
Yeah.
it's like, I'm here for the monster. Why am I only getting like 5 minutes of monster in this like hour and a half minute, hour and a half movie? It's all about this girl
Yeah.
that I don't even care
That's
about. And so
like
for us, we really wanted to give you like a lot of time with the monsters. And
good.
then if we've done our job right, by the end of these 6 issues, you'll be like invested in the family and be like, all right, I want to see what's going to happen next in their story. I want to see what happens next with these monsters, and you're kind of dialed in now.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that because, it's like one of those things with the Godzilla movies that came out. The first Godzilla movie, a lot of people were upset that you really didn't get to see Godzilla for most of the movie. It was just them following these group of people. And a lot of people said the same thing about Godzilla versus King Kong. Focus more on them fighting and other things and set up a group of people. That's why the monsters are there for the first place.
Yeah. Oh, I was sure frustrated with that Godzilla versus Kong. I felt like, I'm a big King Kong guy, man, and I was
Yeah.
like, I thought King Kong got treated kind of like a punk in this thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I was fine with him losing on the aircraft carrier,
Yeah,
you
that made
know.
sense, yeah.
Yeah, but then he really didn't win anything. Like, he
Yeah.
just got his ass kicked the
But
whole
I'm
show.
happy that they paid, homage to the old school movie where he literally sucked a tree down Godzilla's mouth. That was funny, so
Nice. Yeah, no, but I think the failure of that movie was that you just didn't care, because in that movie you actually got a fair bit of Godzilla and Kong,
yeah,
but
mhm,
every time it cut to the other people, you're just like, I do not care about this at all.
yeah.
And that was the
Yeah,
real problem, I think. Like, because you
yeah,
did
because
get quite a bit of monster madness in that movie.
yeah. Oh, yeah, you did. I wish they would've paid more attention to what happened to the other monsters after, the 2nd film, because we never got to see them more. But with horror comics, like you said, or horror movies in general, you're focusing too much on the humans, where literally growing up in the '80s and '90s at the playground, besides having what your favorite superhero is and who would kick whose ass, you would usually do the same thing with like with horror villains. Like, no, Freddy would kick Jason's ass, or Leatherface would fight Michael, and Michael would lose. So on and so on. And
Yeah.
it's one of those things where people watch horror movies not for the people, they watch it for the killer. Like they're placing bets. It's like who's gonna die first, and rooting to see who dies. Like, okay, that guy's the asshole in the movie. I want to see him die.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I was doing this panel as I felt like a bit of a dummy. It was all like psychologists on the on this comic book panel, and me. I was the only person that made comics on it. And I mentioned like and when you're watching like a scary movie and you're kind of like rooting for the bad guy to like kill somebody, and they
Yeah.
looked at me like I was like some sort of like maniac. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, doesn't everybody do that? Doesn't everybody cheer for Freddy? Especially when like there's some bully or there's some jerk in the movie. You're like, oh, he's gonna get him
Yeah,
eventually.
exactly. And not just that, but people talk about what their favorite kill is. It's like, oh, this was my favorite kill from Dream Master, the girl who turned into the cockroach, and so on and so on. So yeah.
Um, have you been watching many horror movies this year?
Oh, of course. I'm
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the Chucky TV show to come back out. And I'm actually intrigued to see how the new Hellraiser movie is.
Okay, so I was like, it's supposed to come out today, right? Hellraiser.
I think so, yeah. Like,
Yeah,
actually saw the design of her body where literally her skin is carved out, shaped like a outfit. Really cool design.
I was like so choked. I went to go watch it this afternoon, and I'm up here in Canada,
Okay.
and in Canada we don't have Hulu, and so most things
Oh,
that come
no.
out on Hulu just go to our Disney Plus.
Yeah.
All right. No Hellraiser on Disney Plus today. So I was like, what? How am I gonna watch this thing? And I'm like looking it
Right.
up online, and it's like get a VPN and like try and like fake your address to this other place. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Like,
Right.
I was really psyched for this movie, so I was kind of choked.
Mhm.
I've got a list of like my top 10 horror movies of this year. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, I mean, I wanna I don't wanna go too much into asking questions. I wanna give you time to talk about your book, but, it's a horror show, and I just love bringing people onto the show to talk about horror because it's one of those things you don't get to see a lot of horror movies or have a lot of horror topics until like around Halloween. But have it all year round. Have it all year round. Like EC Comics. EC Comics, The Tales from the Crypt, before any other comic had like a live version, Tales of the Crypt had their show on HBO, and it did so well. And and Marvel too. The one movie that helped make Marvel bring in that money so they didn't go bankrupt was Blade. And a lot of people didn't know that was a Marvel movie. They just knew it was a crime fighting half man, half vampire, a daywalker vampire. So yeah.
Yeah.
And it's sad too because people forget that the whole comics code and why comics were being banned from all these psychiatrists wasn't because of superhero comics, it was because of horror comics. That was the main reason why people had the judges saying, is this really good for our kids? It's because the horror stuff. Then later on, they're like, okay, Batman and Robin need to have female characters in there, but it all started with horror.
Yeah, no, you're right. EC Comics, creepy,
Yeah.
then Vampirilla. Like, there's a lot of like kind of more edgy stuff that were in comics that like was leading to this code that came in and kind of stifled a lot of that. Um, and that was why you'd see like a lot of comic books kind of go into like magazine format if they have
Yeah.
like horror stuff, and they'd be black and white. It'd be like, and they'd be like larger size. Was to kind of skate around that, but it did really hurt the industry a lot.
Yeah, I did. So before we go into the list that you got, out of all you said vampires, but would Dracula be your favorite like universal monster of all time, or do you actually have another?
Yeah, I think Dracula. He's pretty.
Yeah.
You know, in Universal Monster, he's got that kind of opera cape, and he's kind of smooth, but he's also very masculine and very dangerous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's kind of like a there's a duality to him that I really like.
Yeah, because like later on, especially with the 80s and True Blood and stuff like that, vampires became very sexual and stuff like that. But when you really watch it, Dracula, he had that staring ability and he made a lot of women fall in love with him. So even back then, he had swag and he had that sex appeal.
One thing that we do with our vampires is they have the ability to control animals.
Okay.
So that's a lot of fun. And they also have the ability to mind control the werewolves, and so they're
Oh,
like their soldiers. So that's one aspect of vampires that we put into ours, because you kind of like you pick and choose which mythology you're gonna stick with and which ones you're just kind of gonna go off on your own with. And I
yeah,
like that ability to control animals.
yeah, because there's so many different you know, myths and legends to what vampires can and can't do that you could literally create a story where like you are doing with the controlling animals, or you could just focus on, hey, they're able to turn into mist, or they're able to do and like that, just like with the movie uh Fright Nights. you know you see the friend turn into a werewolf, or the second movie you see the vampire, he likes to be in half wolf form and half human form, which most of the
Right.
time he looks like a werewolf, but he's a vampire. He just likes that transformation the most. So if you want to go into that list, we can.
Yeah, sure, man. All right. So let me see. I have seen at this point in the
You
year,
do
I've
have a
seen.
great wall, that, by the way, all that artwork, that's amazing.
Thanks. I got some cool comics up here too. I got my what do I got? X-Men, and that's my first Wolverine over there. So, got some cool stuff.
Stan.
Yeah. um yeah, so at this point in the year, I've seen 62 brand new movies that just were released this year. And I've seen about 15 horror movies.
Yeah.
And all right, what didn't make the list, I believe. What didn't make the list for me for like my top 10 were Morbius. Didn't
That's
quite
pretty
care for that.
obvious why.
Yeah. It
The
really
whole dance
reminded me of
scene.
like those early 2000s like Marvel movies, like a
Oh my
Daredevil
god.
or a Ghost Rider, like with the cheese factor kind of fairly high on it.
Yeah.
Um, Not that I hated it, but you know, it didn't make my top 10. And also another one that didn't make it. It had some cool action scenes in it. Was a Day Shift with the Jamie Foxx. It was
Yeah.
on
Mhm.
Netflix.
Yeah.
I like some of the action in it, but the comedy was not great. Like Dave Franco, I think, was like peeing his pants all the time, and
Gotcha.
it just didn't add up for me. Um, Let me see. One that I did like though was C for Me. This is a home invasion movie. It's pretty small budget, but it's really cool. The lady who's house sitting is blind,
Oh, okay.
and so she uses this app on her phone called See for Me, which is like a real app,
Yeah.
where you can like talk into it and it'll connect you with someone that can see. So if you're trying to like, find the oregano in your spices, they'll be like, no, that's pepper. No, okay, now you got it. And they'll help you with that. Well,
Gotcha.
there's a home invasion, and the person on the other line is helping her like navigate through the house and avoid these people. And
Mhm.
it's got some twists in it, and
Yeah.
it's a pretty smart script. So that one's called C for Me, if you want to watch out for that.
Oh, I was
Um,
gonna ask you, because this is a question I usually ask. You love horror movies, you love horror comics, and we're both creators in the horror genre for comics. Do you have a limit that you won't go? You know, because you have a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I love Hellraiser, but when you let Clive get away with his horror comics, he goes very graphic with his comics. Same thing
well,
with horror movies. I'm a big fan of horror movies, but I don't like the whole torture porn.
torture ones, yeah, torture
Yeah,
ones kind of creep me out a bit. Actually,
and I'm
that
not
kind
a
of leads me into my
human
next one. I
centipede.
can answer
Human centipede,
both.
I would never watch.
There's this movie called The Sadness, which is I believe it's Korean. It's on Shutter, and it's a zombie movie. Um, kind of. It's not really zombies. They're more like kind of just they've gone mad. Like all the people are just like
Yeah.
crazed and they want to kill you. And there is a scene in a hospital in like uh, in the with like infants in the infirmary there, and it's like I had to like fast forward because
Yeah.
I couldn't watch it. But that one, the gore in that is insane. Like they're more like fast zombies, and it's just like a non-stop kind of thrill ride. So that one is one to watch out for. It's called The Sadness.
Yeah, because it's one of those things like, if for horror comics or horror movies in general, people are like, "Oh, there was a lot of graphic and gory horror movies back then." Like my one of my favorite movies of all time, John Carpenter's The Thing. I'm like, but that was necessary. The whole transformation from like human to monster. It's not just like I'm just gonna throw a bunch of gore and nudity in there, but it doesn't really progress the story and it has no meaning to it. You know what I'm saying? It's just there to get a shock value.
Yeah.
And
Um,
from what you were saying with the babies, yeah, I would fast forward to that too.
yeah. Um, Let me see. One that's brand new. I won't give any spoilers, but Smile. It's
I I haven't seen the movie, but the movie is based off of a short film that you can watch on YouTube, and I really like that short film.
the movie's good and it's
Mhm.
really solid, but it's if you can go in cold, I think you'll really enjoy it a lot. But they give away a lot of it in the trailer, like a lot of it. So that
Oh,
what I
that
found kind of
sucks.
disappointing, and that kind of
Yeah.
knocked it down on my like enjoyment level. Um, let's see. Next one I got is Hellbender. This is like a super cool kind of indie horror flick. It's on Shutter as well. There's like a family. Their name is like the Adams family. It's like this real life family. The dad I think is like the director, and then the mom acts in it, and the daughter acts in it. And
Oh,
it's about this woman who kind of this young teenager that learns that she's like comes from a coven of witches, and they've been isolating her and homeschooling her, trying to keep her away from community. But it's kind of a coming of age story,
mhm.
but it's horrific and it's smart and it's a good one.
Yeah.
It's called Hellbender. Up next, I got Beast. Beast was with it's not really like traditional horror as far as like a monster, but these lions are like stalking this guy is Ildis Elbra, and he goes to Africa with his two daughters.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're stalked by lions. It was a cool one. It's worth checking out.
That's cool.
Um, let's see, a little bit higher up. I watched the movie actually just last night as well on Shutter. It's called Watcher, and this one takes place in Romania, and it's about uh, American actress and her husband go to Romania to for his work, and she's just alone in the apartment every day, and she can see this guy like staring at her, and there's a serial killer out on the loose, and she starts to think, well, maybe that guy that's staring at her is really the serial killer. And it's really trippy because it's like, is she just going nuts like because she's alone by herself all the time, or is
Yeah.
there something actually happening here?
Gotcha.
And so it's a bit of a slow burn, but it's pretty great. I really enjoyed it a lot. All right, so now
So
we're getting
I was going to ask, so with horror movies, you have all these different genres and everything. What type of horror genre would be your favorite? Like, you have fantasy, you got slasher, you got comedy.
yeah, there's paranormal, there's
Mhm.
yeah, there's
Which is
found footage, there's all sorts
yeah,
of different types,
which
right?
is great. Why I tell people try to create a story in horror comics, because unlike a superhero, you're pretty much going to get idea what a superhero comic's going to be about, but there's so many subgenres in horror comics, you could create like so many stories out of that.
Yeah, no, totally, you're right. My favorite subgenre of horror, I do like the slashers,
Mhm.
like Scream is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. When I think like my favorites of the year, they're kind of more towards the slasher end of things.
Yeah,
Um,
gotcha.
yeah, I like it a little bit speedier than like the one I was just describing. The Watcher is more of, it's almost like a thriller, but
Yeah.
there's a horror aspect to it. Um, yeah. What about you? What's your kind of favorite subgenre?
It would definitely be slashers, but, also on top of it, besides slashers, because I'm a big Freddy Krueger fan, my favorite slasher of all time, and but there's just something great about when you could have horror and comedy mixed so well together. When you have, like, movies like Killer Clowns from Outer Space that is now so popular, but back then it was a cult classic. It's still a cult classic. But then when you also get, like, some of these, like, other horror movies too, like Critters and, Ghoulies, just very fun properties to work with, and some of them, yes, can be cheesy, but when you could, like, mix those 2, like, comedy and horror, because there are some deaths, especially in a lot of horror movies now that use a lot of CGI. It's like, wow, that that CGI was horrible. That's why it's so funny, because you could tell it's CGI, or just the way someone died, it's like, that's just really cheesy.
Yeah. No, I like horror comedies like Shaun of the Dead and
Oh, man, that's a great movie.
Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Yeah, mhm,
Yeah, those are those are fun.
yeah,
But then I also like, where the killers got a kind of twisted sense of humor, like
mhm.
Freddy or Chucky. Those are a lot of fun too. I put a little sprinkling of that into Cover of Darkness, not too much, but
Awesome,
our
awesome.
mummy character is a little twisted, and so he'll, you know, I have a scene where this guy's going to his bedroom, and the mummy lifts up the curtains, not the curtains, lifts up the covers rather, and
Yeah.
there's his wife is like dead, and he's there, and he's like, "Come to bed, dear, my feet are cold." There's the mummy with like just blood dripping down his face, and he's ripped open the
Got a
woman's
dad
mouth.
joke right there. It's like,
Yeah.
mommy's got a funny bone right there. Ha ha ha. Yeah, that's
Uh,
awesome.
wait. So, all right, getting into like my top what, five? All right,
Okay.
we've got Pearl, which is the Ty West kind of
The sequel to,
prequel,
yeah, that,
yeah, to
like,
X.
I haven't watched Pro yet, but the first movie, I'm like, wow, this is actually really good.
Yeah, I loved X, and you'll see that a little bit higher up on this list. But
Awesome.
Pearl's a little bit slower paced,
Mhm.
but once it gets going, it gets nuts, and it's kind of more of like, it's kind of a weird vibe of like slasher and meets like Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, kind of putting all those things together is
That's
just,
funny.
it's really fun. And the acting performance by Mia Goth, holy smokes, like
Oh, yeah.
I
Mhm.
hope she can get nominated for an award because
Yeah, for
she's
her to
just,
play a young girl and play an old woman in the first movie, amazing.
yeah. And then after that, I've got Scream, a Scream 5. I really enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah,
And then Fresh. Fresh is on Hulu. It's with Sebastian Stan.
yeah.
Uh, I don't want to spoil it, but like at all. I really don't want to spoil it. But you should see it. I think that's my number. Well, I think I'm off on my numbers, but it's pretty high up on my list here. And it starts off as kind of like a, almost like a romantic comedy that goes terribly wrong.
Gotcha. Mhm.
And so if you like romantic comedies and you like horror movies, you have to see this one because it's like,
Awesome.
yeah, it's such a great start to it. And it just, and even if you don't like romantic comedies and you just like horror movies, watch this, tough it out through the first 15, 20 minutes, and then you'll start to like it a lot.
That's awesome.
I've got lots here, dude. I also have Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Yeah.
That was a cool one with Pete Davidson, and it's kind of like a who done it. That was
Mhm.
fun. The Black Phone this year was great.
I haven't seen the Black Phone.
You haven't
That's
seen The Black
just
Phone?
I just been busy, been busy trying to do my horror comic and just, you know, first off, thank you everyone who voted for me to get as far as I can in the Face of Horror contest. I placed 10th place in my group. So I appreciate everyone who voted, you know.
Awesome.
But next time, next time. But yeah, so But with Black Phone, yeah, I just haven't took the time to watch that. I got to watch that actually tonight. But just
Yeah.
just the trailer and the concept from what I've seen, it's like okay, this is different, this is original, and yeah, I'm and just the mask alone, just awesome face costume design.
Yeah, they call that guy the Grabber in it.
Okay, gotcha.
And yeah, he's kind of I could see him as being kind of a new horror icon. I hope they
Really?
can
That's
continue
cool.
this thing in some way. I think it'd be really cool. My top three for the year though are top three or top two? Hold on. Top two. No, top three. Okay, Nope. I really like Nope a lot. That was
Oh,
the
no.
Jordan Peele.
Yes, yes. I'm
Yeah,
happy to see how horror movies are becoming like Nope, and well, it's a different director, but Midsummer was a great movie as well. I really enjoyed Midsummer.
yeah. I really like the twist with Nope that like blew me away,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the
People, you got to watch that. Not going to spoil it, but
no,
it's definitely not what I thought it was going to be. But great twist.
yeah, and the characters are super likable, and like that
Oh
old
yeah,
director guy and the sister, and man, like everybody's like really cool in it, and just kind of hoping that everybody makes it out of, you know. Wait, that was number three, and then number two, X. I loved X,
hmm,
and my favorite one this year has been Barbarian,
okay,
with Justin Long,
yeah,
and it's like if you've seen the trailer, it's about a girl that goes to check into an Airbnb and there's already somebody staying there. And it's like
yeah,
this awkward kind of situation because there's no other hotels. And what do you do? And then she's got to get to know this guy who's played by Skarsgård, the guy who played Pennywise. He's the
awesome.
guy that's already staying there. And that's how it starts, but it just goes totally like just bananas. And
Yeah,
it's so much fun. So if you haven't seen Barbarian yet, that's probably my number one horror recommendation.
awesome. So if you had to like, if you have Mount Rushmore and you could put any type of like horror icons on there, from Candyman, from Freddy to Leatherface, who would be your Mount Rushmore? Starting from your, your top favorite slasher to your least. But I mean, well, not to your least, but the top four that are the most important.
Well, I might get some hate for this because
Yeah.
I'm not a big silent killer guy.
Gotcha.
So for me, I'm not putting Jason on there. I'm not putting Michael Myers on there. I'm not putting Leatherface on there.
Yeah.
So I'm putting Freddy for sure.
Hmm.
I'm putting Ghostface. I do like Candyman a lot.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorites actually. We've only done about 10 horror movie reviews on my movie review channel. Candyman is one of them. And it's kind of cool because like the other people that were doing the review with me, they had never seen it before. They're not like,
That's crazy.
yeah.
They must be be young. I don't know. I don't know.
No, they weren't that young. They just
Yeah.
skipped it. They just weren't big horror
It was
guys. So
it was one of those things like after you watch Candyman, you and all your friends would go in front of a mirror and say it. But then you had your parent or like one of your older siblings hiding behind something so they could jump out while your friends were doing it.
so there's three. So I need one more.
Yeah.
I don't know. Chucky's pretty good. Like the first two Child's Play movies are really solid. The second
Have
one
you
and the
watched the
Toy
TV
Factory too.
series?
I have not. I haven't seen the Cult of Chucky and then there's the Curse of Chucky, and I haven't seen the TV show. So
The second season's coming out soon. But yeah, I like how the actual creator of Chucky took the is directing it and right pretty much like no spoilers, but you get to see the origins of like who this man was. So, not going to go into it, but it's definitely a watch. And some of the most brutal kills. So yeah,
all
definitely
right, let's
you
put
have to
Chucky
watch
on
it.
there. But
You definitely have to watch it.
we'll put Chucky on my top four.
But it's one of those things, even though I love the 80s horror, but like you were saying, I see more and more people talk about Scream because the horror genre was dying out during the 90s. And Scream came along and it literally set it up to be something amazing because it wasn't just people going around killing people, but it was a bunch of teenagers standing around talking about horror movies and then getting to like the rules like don't say I'll be back because you never come back. So yeah.
Mhm. I think Matthew Lillard doesn't get enough praise for his
What's
role
up,
in the
Kathleen?
first Scream,
Thank you, sis, for coming by.
because his stew,
Yeah,
because he's the
Stu,
one who
yeah.
says I'll be back,
Uh-huh.
or I'll be right back, and he's the one who, like, when he gets stabbed, he's like, you're killing me, man. And I'm just
Yeah,
like, he was, to me, he was the best part of that movie. Like,
yeah.
and there's a lot of great parts of that, and like,
Mhm.
like Jamie Kennedy's movie nerd, and Nev Campbell's Sydney, and and Dewey and Courtney Cox, and like there's a lot of great parts of that movie, but I think Matthew Lillard kind of was the star.
Yeah. So, I don't know if we want to talk about it because I mean, it did come out next year, but the last Scream movie, the person that we thought was going to live because he always does
Mhm.
died,
I think we can
which
talk spoilers
yeah,
on
yeah.
Scream. Come on,
So
it's been like
so
10 months, so
so yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So, I, I was surprised, but I'm like, how many times can he survive? Dewey could survive during a kill. I mean, the man was stabbed in the back several times, but he still found a way. But just the way they killed him with like the stab through the front and the back, and then going up and down with the blades, just a heroic hero way to die. And him unloading the gun and going back, just badass. I'm happy that it's sad to see him die, but the way they did it was just done really well.
Yeah. I think that these new characters that they introduced, the daughter of Billy Loomis,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
I think that they're strong characters, and I'm interested in seeing where the franchise can go with their direction. So I was okay with them losing. It's pretty rare that you get, some main characters in a horror franchise make it 5 movies. So,
Yeah, exactly, I
um,
mean, because you especially didn't have that with Nightmare on Elm Street,
no,
so but yeah. But
yeah,
do you think at one point when they, because 'cause they're talking about making more movies, do you think at one point they're gonna actually finally have, not Gale, but well, maybe. Do you think they're actually gonna kill off the other 2? Because those are the really main 2 characters left of the franchise from the beginning.
I I would think that there's a good chance that either Gail or Sydney get off in the next one, and then the one will be the next movie
I
after that.
I kinda wanna see, like I kinda wanna see Sydney die the most just because I'm like, you got too much luck. I mean, you can't be the final girl forever, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, or maybe she goes nuts finally,
Mhm. But
and is the
but it
killer.
but it was
Uh-huh.
interesting with the movie how they were depicting that, you're just like your father, you're a crazy psycho. But I'm happy to see that wasn't the case with that movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed that movie a lot, and I'm glad the franchise is back, because there's a long break from 3 to 4, and then there was a long break from 4 to 5. So now I
You like
think
the TV show?
I skipped the TV show. I didn't
Yeah,
see
I
it.
did too. I didn't really get into it, but yeah.
I also really liked I Know What You Did Last Summer. The first one,
Yeah. Mhm.
was great, and then kind of went off the rails after that.
Yeah, the
But
the
I'd like
last
to see
one
like a
was
return to form.
stupid. Oh, the last one was so stupid. Like, I don't know if you ever watched Dead Meat channel. It's basically a guy who literally he reviews horror movies, and not just reviews, but he has like different kills. He'll like, these are how many kills was in this movie, and that's how many kills in that movie. And then he'll give like a golden chainsaw for the best kill in that movie. Really cool channel. But yeah, just when you had the main killer become back as like the undead, it was just so stupid. Like
Yes,
there,
I remember hearing about that one. Yeah.
it's one of those things. It's like I'm gonna say it out there, people. Just with certain horror movies or certain franchises, you just need to stop. Just like with the Fast and the Furious, you just need to stop. You know.
I don't know. People can say that about like anything, and then you can always come back again strong, right? Like I felt like Halloween was going off the rails with that resurrection, right? When
Yeah.
Buster Rhymes is doing karate and taking down Michael Myers. I'm just like, this movie stinks.
Yeah.
And
But a lot of
then they,
people hated the fact that, Michael and the whole cult idea and everything, people didn't like that.
yeah,
Especially, the older they get. It's like, why does it have to be supernatural? Why can't he just be a crazy guy just wanting to kill people? I think it's that point, where they had like Jason coming back as a zombie. They had to have everything explained as a supernatural way instead of just someone being a madman.
yeah. So, that was kind of a low point for me in the Halloween franchise. And then uh, was it 2019 where or was it 2018? The one that came out with Jamie Lee Curtis kind of back in
Yeah.
the lead, and it was
Yeah,
written by
the
like
new
Danny McBride, and it
yeah.
was that was really good. So you
Yeah,
can go from
Halloween Kills, I really enjoy that. Especially the one part where you see Michael kill everyone in the mob fight after they thought they beat the shit out of him and took him down. Nope, he's like, nope, you thought you had me, but not. Yeah.
yeah.
So
No,
definitely looking forward to that.
yeah. Then the Halloween ends. I'm psyched. I don't believe for a second that it'll be the last Halloween movie that we get, but I do think it'll be the last one with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, because she's like, I'm tired of doing these. I'm like, I mean, I don't blame her. She started off with Halloween, then other people who aren't big horror fans and stuff remember hers from prom night as well. So yeah, just at a certain point, the older you get, you just don't want to keep on running and have to wear all this makeup and stuff like that. Just like with Robert Englund, I can't. He says he doesn't want to do another film just because of all the makeup. The guy's almost in his 80s. I could see you don't want to be in a chair for like 3 hours getting makeup on.
I would kind of like if Blumhouse got the rights to
Mhm.
Nightmare on Elm Street,
Yeah.
and they did the same thing like they're doing with Halloween and with Jamie Lee Curtis. They
Mhm.
made 3 more movies with Robert Englund, film them all like back to back to back, and like let's just have 3 more years of that. That would be amazing.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Awesome. With horror movies, I do have to ask some one question. And sometimes people pick one over the other, but who's your favorite final girl from Nightmare? Is it Nancy or is it Alice?
Alice from uh,
4 and
Nightmare
5.
on Elm Street 3.
No,
Who's Patricia Arquette? Uh,
she was in
in
3.
3 in Dream
Yeah.
Warriors.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, I like her.
Yeah, okay. Okay. See, a lot of people don't pick her. They usually pick Alice or, Nancy just because they've been in like more than one film. But even though Patricia's character was portrayed by another actress in 4, but yeah, just the whole idea of like grabbing someone and bring them into your dreams was a really cool idea.
Yeah. Am I allowed to pick her? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I always like when people pick something like unusual because it's like you have these fan favorites that everybody picks, but they don't pick the other ones. Just like again, I'm excited that you're introducing like the Phantom of the Opera into your books because he doesn't get enough love. It's like you have that, and people don't know too, but the Hunchback of Notre Dame was a monster too in the Universal pictures. But again, they don't really focus on those characters because they're like, eh, even with when you look at like Universal like properties like coffee mugs, t-shirts, stuff like that, is usually the ones that people know the most.
Yeah, and that's it. Well,
Mhm.
so we wanted to stick to like the big five for this first
Yeah.
mini series, but like I said, it goes into this larger world as the series
Mhm.
continues, and it will continue. And so we do have the Invisible Woman, we do have uh, Lady Phantom of the Opera. We have our version of Bloody Mary. We have a
Oh my god,
Medusa.
that's awesome.
We've got a Minotaur. So we've got kind of Greek mythology things in there as well. Um, yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but like the sequel, we start off small with just vampires, and then there's werewolves, and then we slowly add more and more and more and more characters until it's just this massive world.
Yeah,
And the goal is to get all those characters on the page at once, but you have to start small and kind of introduce them to the reader so that they care about those characters.
yeah,
Because it doesn't mean anything if you don't know who they are, if you don't know why you should care about them. So that's why we start off. It sounds like we're starting off small, but we're starting off with vampires and then werewolves, and then just get crazier and just add more and more stuff to the pot. But the vampires and the werewolves are in every issue.
that's cool.
Yeah. So you're gonna get that if you're a vampire and werewolf fan, you're gonna get plenty of that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's fun.
Awesome. Well, we're past the 1 hour mark. I don't know if you want to have anything else to promote, but it's been really great to have you on, and definitely have you on in the future. Where next time, if you want to just come on and we talk about a random horror topic, like favorite, like we could do a top. Actually, yeah, I haven't done that. We could actually rate all the Scream movies from the best to the worst if you want to do that.
Yeah,
That'd
that'd
be
be great.
fun.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd love to come back. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem.
And yeah, thanks for letting me talk about Cover of Darkness. Like I've already said, the
Yeah,
Kickstarter is launching in about 10 days. And so right now, what you can do today is you can click that link that you provided, and
to
it
notify
takes you
you.
to like
Yeah.
our pre-launch page, and then you get notified when it launches, so you don't forget about it, because 10 days is a long time. So yeah, if you're watching this and you've enjoyed, hearing me talk about monster movies and making comic books, please click that link, and that way you'll know about it when it comes out.
Yeah. A guy, if you haven't watched it, rewatch from the beginning or just click on the link and just look at the artwork. And like he was saying earlier, not just comics, but plan to have like role playing game. Like, is it cards or a board? Yeah,
It's a card
because
game, yeah.
yeah, card game. Just that'd be awesome alone. Especially with you saying that your universe is so big and you have so many different monsters. Definitely can't wait to see how that card game plays out. So,
Thanks so much.
all right. Well, you all have a good night, and I'll see you all next week. Peace.